All right, thank you very much. I see you clapping, even though I don't hear you, so we appreciate that. Like your director said, we are from the 4th Infantry Division Band, just down the road at Fort Carson. We are the resident low brass quartet, as you can see, made up of a couple trombones, euphonium, and tuba. My name is Master Sergeant David Newcomb, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce the other members of the group. My other trombone player here is Specialist Derek Bondy. Over here on euphonium, we've got Sergeant Chris Cotten. And in the back on tuba, Specialist Quinn Connelly. So that was Light Cavalry Overture. It's a popular classical piece. It's also used a lot in pop culture, movies, soundtracks, that kind of thing. So it might be a little bit familiar, or could even be something you've played a version of before. So that's an example of one style of music we like to play. We like to play a wide variety of pieces We're going to play a few more things for you, but we're also going to talk a little bit about chamber music. So does everybody know what chamber music is? Can I say that?
Yeah.
See a few nods, a few shakes of the head. So who thinks they have played in a chamber ensemble before? Maybe not yet. So I see one hand there. So I say anytime you play with another musician without a conductor, you're playing chamber music, whether that's a duet all the way up to a quintet. So there's some common configurations you've probably seen before: brass quintets, woodwind quintets. You're going to see a woodwind quintet from us later on during this class. Trombone quartets, tuba euphonium quartets, and we're kind of a hybrid of that. So as we rehearse, we have to think about things a little bit differently. We don't have a conductor in front of us who's showing us the tempo or dynamics or style. We have to have that awareness all on our own. And we have to communicate with each other. You might have seen us kind of moving our instruments to cue certain notes or tempos, that kind of thing. So as we continue on, be watching for some of that stuff. We're gonna play our next tune. This is something that's probably familiar to you, even though it's a little before your time. It's "Yesterday" by the Beatles. It was written quite a long time ago, but it's probably one of the most covered songs in U.S. history. A lot of people have played it, so it's one of those kind of timeless classics you might have heard before. This is our kind of unique take on it. All right, thank you very much. So as we're working on something like that, there's a lot of things we all individually need to be aware of. Obviously, knowing our own parts very well so that we can get out of the stand a little bit and look around at each other and communicate with each other. But along with that, knowing everybody else's parts and how they all fit together. So one way we can kind of test this and work on this, see how well we really do know each other's parts and how well we're listening to each other, we're going to show you a few practice and rehearsal techniques that we use as an ensemble in this and the next tune. So the first one we're going to do, everybody face away from each other. So as much as possible in this setting, we can't see each other, so they can't necessarily see my slide moving and cueing what tempo I want or anything like that. We have to listen to each other, and if somebody does something dynamically or with the tempo, everybody else has to listen for that and really clue into it. So let's try it out. All right, I think that went pretty well. So I would encourage you to try that if you find yourself playing in a small ensemble, you know, even a duet. See if you can really clue into each other's time, dynamics, style, all kinds of things like that. Or you might even try that with the full band. Get in a big circle and face away from each other. So we're going to move on to the next song, and I'm going to hand the mic over to Specialist Derek Bondy to introduce that.
Good morning again, everybody. This next tune that we're going to do is by Antonio Carlos Jobim. He's a Brazilian composer and jazz musician, and this tune is called No More Blues. It's in the Bossa Nova style, which was kind of made famous and popularized internationally in the 1960s with tunes that you might have heard, like Girl from Ipanema or Wave are some others. And so this is a jazz tune, and one thing that we want to keep in mind when we approach new music is making sure we're understanding the style. And so a lot of times when someone says, oh, this is a jazz tune, they think immediately that it's a swing tune, so the eighth notes are swung. And Master Sergeant Newcomb's going to give us an example of that. Yeah, so the tune Fly Me to the Moon, that's another jazz standard. So and we're going to pick a spot of this tune, and we're going to have you play it both ways and have you guys hear the difference.
Swing first, right?
Swing first.
So here's swing.
And now let's hear it straight eighths. Can everybody hear the difference? So while the swung version isn't necessarily wrong, it's just not stylistically appropriate. And when you play it straight eighth like that, it has a groove. And that's one of the things that attracted us to this tune. We just like, oh, we got to play this. It's got such a cool groove. So we're going to talk about some rehearsal techniques for how we got this piece together.
All right, so this particular arrangement is very complex, the way a lot of the parts fit together, and you're going to hear that as we play the entire tune. But before we do that, we're going to play a couple of sections for you, just to give you a little idea of how we would rehearse something like this. You can't just necessarily play it straight through. You have to identify those trouble spots and really break it down and apply some practice techniques to really figure out how it all fits together and tighten everything up. So one of the first things we did is we realized there's one section that has a lot of complex rhythms, some mixed meter, and we're all kind of in unison there, but we weren't exactly fitting together. So everybody here, when you practice on your own, use a metronome, right? Oh, getting a little bit of deer in headlights. Okay, so let this serve as your reminder. Use a metronome when you practice. You can use the same technique with any type of ensemble. You might need to make it a little bit louder. So in this particular section, we used a metronome. And we might start a little bit under tempo and then gradually work our way up. But for right now, we'll just play through that section just to give you an idea with the metronome at tempo. All right, and then there's a few other sections in this where there's a lot of independence in the parts going on. So we approached it a little bit different way and broke down the parts in different configurations so we can really hear what everybody else is doing, and then we know how our part fits into that. So we'll take one section where we have just the melody of the tune and the bass line. We'll see how that fits together.
Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2.
All right, so that's the melody and bass line, and then while that's going on, myself and Sergeant Cotten, we have some inner parts that kind of play off of that a little bit and play off of each other. So listen to this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So now that we have a pretty good idea of what everybody's parts are, how they fit together, let's try playing it all together. One, two, 3. All right, so we're going to play one other segment for you, and this one is equally complex where we all have something completely different from each other. So it's kind of hard to hear how your part fits in to every other part. So what we're going to do is we kind of created a loop with it. We're just going to have the bass line, our tuba player, just play his line over and over, and then we're going to gradually add in the other parts. And you can kind of hear the independence and how they all fit together. So now that we gave you a little bit of an idea of how we rehearse that, we're going to play the whole tune down. So you have a couple of sections there that you're going to recognize. So listen for those sections as we play it through. And then also just check out the beginning. It's a very unique way it was arranged and how the melody is kind of passed around different members of the ensemble. This is No More Blues by Joe Beam. All right, thank you very much. So one other thing I was going to point out, you might have noticed that Chris Cotten over here was playing euphonium on the first couple of tunes and switched over to trombone. And we had a question yesterday about doubling. First of all, do we have any trombone players in the class? They might be off camera.
Yeah.
Awesome. And any euphonium players? Okay. Anybody who plays both?
Dominic at home plays both. He plays euphonium here and then plays trombone and jazz band. So
Very cool. So I'm going to let Sergeant Cotten here talk a little bit about his experience with doubling.
I think the first thing I should say is that I started playing trombone when I was in 6th grade. It was about 20 years ago now, which doesn't feel like 20 years ago, but here I am. So I played trombone for about 6 months, and I was having a hard time learning how to play slurs on the trombone. Can you relate to that, trombone players? So I decided the trombone was too hard and started playing euphonium instead. So that's my initial experience with doubling. About 6 months later, they decided they needed a trombone player for jazz band. That's kind of the whole story. Both are in demand, and I've been playing both. I also play a little bit of tuba. So I think the more versatile you can be, the more stuff that you can get involved in. So going on to college, if you plan to go to college for music, euphoniums only have places in concert bands. So that's another thing to think about, what your particular instrument can do. So I had to keep playing trombone if I wanted to be in jazz band. I spent some time in orchestra, and I got a more rounded experience that way. And that carried over to my professional life in the Army. I still play both, and I still get to do a lot of cool stuff. So in a nutshell, it's kind of my experience with doubling. Do you all have any questions for us while we're kind of stopped talking?
I have one quick one while you're kind of on this thread, if that's okay. Do you guys change your approach when you're playing your F attachment horns versus if you have smaller horns for jazz or anything like that? Because I know some of our kids do that. So
Yeah, I bet Specialist Bondy could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you're going to play in orchestra and you're going to play in jazz band, it's pretty important to have two setups if you can. I know when I was in high school, I kind of bought a horn that's sort of in the middle. It was like a medium bore, and that worked okay for a while, but as I got into college, I got a dedicated symphonic horn, and I had a smaller horn that I played in big band or in funk bands and that kind of stuff. And so finding the right mouthpiece and setup is kind of individual, but you just want to go for the sound that you're going for depending on which group you're playing in. And that's a pretty good way to go about it.
you guys have any questions?
All right, so we're going to start transitioning over to our woodwind quintet. Let them come in and get set up, but that'll give us a couple more minutes. If anybody has any other questions specific to brass players or anything else you've heard so far or anything you've just always wondered.
Anything, guys? Feel free to talk about what we asked this yesterday, but what a typical day in the life looks like for an Army musician like yourselves.
Yeah, we had a question yesterday about, so is that your only job in the Army as musicians? Some people wondered, well, are we actually just infantry or transportation or all the other jobs in the Army, and we just kind of do this on the side? Well, the answer to that is no. We're hired as musicians through a competitive audition process. That said, yes, we do have other military duties and training requirements. We take physical fitness tests twice a year, and we qualify on our rifles twice a year. A lot of other general military tasks, and then there's a lot of just administrative things that go into maintaining the band, like scheduling our performances, paperwork, all that kind of thing. So our primary job is definitely musicians, but we do a little bit of everything, I would say.